Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to another fic night from Fanfic Talk. I am your hostess, Mage Maddie. Ugh. Today I have the wonderful double guest feature of a person, and oh god, hold on, I have it on the other tab. Ha 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 ha.
I thought that was me.
Sorry, I know how to do technology. And we have Lost in the Lights, also known as Low, which is why
Hello.
it's in parentheses. Um, Today we're doing a little bit of a different twist on Fic Night. All three of us are actually participating in Rogue Slytherins. I'll read fluff if I want to. I'll write fluff if I want to. Challenge, which is meant to be a series of 30 1,000 word or less snapshots with prompts that were provided that are due at the end of next month. So we're all going to be reading one each of our current submissions for that prompt. I will start, and the way we're going to do it is we will each read, and then we will ask questions of the author immediately following the reading of the fic. So to start, I am going to start off by reading the first chapter of Lover by Lost in the Lights. It is in the Grishaverse fandom, and it is rated for teen audiences, and there are no advisories. So this one is entitled, We Could Leave the Christmas Lights Up Till January. Nina had always loved the Christmas season in Ketterdam, even though Kaz reminded her at every turn that it wasn't like her Ravkan holidays. No, when you lived in Kirch, every holiday was still in service of Gezin, and though the twinkling lights scattered throughout the city were Nina's favorite part of the winter after the feast of Sankt Nikolai, she was all too aware that business still reigned supreme in this city. Still, when given the opportunity to walk along the embankments under the lights for Matthias's first winter in Kirch, she jumped at the chance. They'd stopped at a vendor's booth near their apartment that was selling warm spiced wine, and the alcohol, combined with Matthias's arm curled around her shoulders. Why am I saying his name so weird? Matthias? I don't know. Pressing her into the side of his body, had kept the chill away from her bones. Thankfully, the presence of the ocean typically held most of the extreme weather at bay, so they didn't have any snow to contend with. But the wind off the canals still managed to be harsh and unyielding if you weren't careful. Now, as they finally reached the main road, hundreds of sparkling lights were strung every which way, from lamppost to lamppost, across and around the walkways, illuminating every inch of the path. Isn't it beautiful? Nina sighed, the heat from her breath steaming as it came into contact with the cold air around them. Yes, Matthias replied, his hair shining positively golden under all the lights. It reminds me of Tisjarna. Oh, I hate that word. Nina turned to look up at him, furrowing her brow. Tisjarna? I've never heard of that. It's an old tradition. Most don't practice it anymore, but my grandmother does, every year, Matthias said simply. She would light candles every night for a week and place them in the windows to beckon good spirits to the household. Then she would make food to place it on the doorstep as an offering, and we would recite prayers before bed, and on the last night, all the lights in the house were darkened, and we would watch as the stars appeared in the night sky. And if we were lucky, DL would send a snowfall, accept our offerings and prayers, and the good spirits would remain with us until the new year. And if he didn't? Matthew smiled wryly. It was Fjerda, Nina, darling. There's always a snowfall. And so, a few weeks later, when the Christmas season was over and the new year was fast approaching, Nina announced that they would be celebrating Tisjarna that year. Their lights remained in the windows instead of candles, and on more than one occasion they'd forgotten about the offerings left on their porch, and Trassel managed to treat himself to a second dinner. And most nights Nina forgot at least part of the prayers, but they were happy to do so. On the final night, they huddled together on their couch, both watching as the stars slowly winked into existence as best they could over the brilliantly lit city. Happy Tisjarna, Nina, Matthias whispered into the night sky. Happy Tisjarna, Matthias. The next morning when they awoke, they would open their eyes to see a truly miraculous sight. For the first time in decades, snow had fallen upon Kirch. The end. That prompt was the stargazing prompt from that list. So low. Also, I apologize for any horrible oh my gosh, I can't even speak anymore. Mispronunciations of things. I don't know. I also had a stream this morning that was 4 hours, so I'm just not good with words. So Lo, what made you decide to do a little holiday themed thing for this prompt?
Well, I guess the prompt itself, I don't think was what I started with. I started with the title Lover, obviously from a Taylor Swift song. And I decided that for all 30 of the chapters, it would be like the lyrics of Lover. So when you read through the current chapters that are up on FFT, it's like the first few lines of that song. And so I knew I needed something holiday themed because the first line of that song is "We could leave the Christmas lights up till January." Um, and it kind of just worked itself out where I was like, I think it would be cute if they fell asleep in like the winter time watching the stars like on their couch, and then it like kind of snowballed, and I was like, how do I get Christmas in there while also remembering that like religion is a big part of like Matthias's character arc in the books, even though this is a modern AU, whatever. Yeah, and I think it was just like it was the prompt that worked the best with like that idea I had.
I love it.
Yeah.
As this is also the first installment of this series, what made you decide or settle on this pairing for this whole challenge piece?
So I watched the Shadow and Bone series, and then our lovely friend Taylor was like, "You should read the books for Six of Crows," and I was like, "Sounds good." And I read them, and I went, "Ooh, badass bisexual girl who likes waffles and her himbo boyfriend. That I like that. That's me. I'm gonna. That's mine now. I've taken that." And so when I saw the fluff challenge, I was like, "Oh, I could make them happy." Because no spoilers, they deserve to be happy. Yeah, and it was just me going, I could make this. I could make two characters who just simp over each other for two full books. Fluff. Absolutely. That's so easy. And then I did.
I love it.
How do you feel about writing because it's like I know FFT, most of us started out with like Harry Potter fan fiction. So how do you feel about like, branching out into another fandom? What's that been like?
Does it feel different, like the way, like the headspace you have to get into to write for this fandom versus like Harry Potter?
Yeah. I think when I was writing Harry Potter things, it was really easy because I grew up with that series. So knowing the characterizations, it was like kind of like, oh, well, I know that obviously. It's super easy to just fall back on like the old patterns of knowing that stuff. And for this it was pretty easy. Like just because I guess like I do relate to Nina and I do want a himbo like Matthias. So it was fun. But it's also just a little bit different. So like I'll send the chapters to like my one friend Emily, who will be like, you got this wrong, like this characterization feels a little off, and like I'll rework it and I'll come back and she's like, that's perfect. And so it's like I have to be more aware of things. And also I spent a lot of time doing next gen stuff where you don't really have characterization, so it's a lot easier to just do whatever you want. But it's been fun. I really enjoy it. It's made me branch out of like that area and kind of not forced because I've chosen it, but like it's made me write things that are different than what I normally would have. So I like it.
How do you feel about doing are all of the Fix in Lover AU or just some of them?
Yeah, so the entire story is like it's all part of the same timeline.
Okay.
So it's like the same timeline. It's just little moments in their lives that are broken up based on like where the lyrics match. But when I post everything, I will also post a graph, probably on the forums, to be like, if you wanted to read this in order, like this is exactly like the timeline, the order of their relationship, and how like I wrote it chronologically. So yeah.
Are you writing them chronologically, or are they kind of just coming to you as they come to you?
I'm writing them chronologically. It's really difficult. I wrote the 4th chapter yesterday because I had to post it on AO3 today. Like, I'm not doing great at writing it, but it's happening.
Why'd you decide to do AU?
This because I wanted them to be happy.
That's fair. That's a good reason all on its own.
Yeah, I can't say more than that.
That is fair.
That's good enough.
Knowing enough of I'm somehow going to make this about me, even though it's about Lowe's fic, but whatever. Actually, you know what? There's a Brooklyn sign right there. I think that makes it justified making it about me. I'm mocking my own city. I'm allowed to. Anyway, it's interesting for me because Lo and Taylor are, two of my closest friends on the site. So I like to read their stuff, but I haven't had time to read Six of Crows yet. So I have read a lot of their fics, and I'm kind of in a position where I'm like, I know that they're all unhappying the actual books because there's a lot of trauma, and I have some idea of what that is, and also I have some idea of their like characterization, but also this is all from reading your fics.
Yep.
So, so that makes sense. I was wondering if that was why.
Yeah, that was entirely why.
Yeah.
Love that for you. All right. Well, if that's it, I think we'll move on where the lovely Lo is now going to read one of Bronwyn's pieces.
Woo.
I don't know which chapter or what the chapter is called, but Lo can tell you that.
For sure. All right. So this story is called Chaotic Bisexual Fluff Thumbs Up, ! By Abhorsen. And the chapter is called Sam Sort of Pretends That Concerns About Heatstroke Are the Only Reason to Tell Bucky to Crash Upstairs with Him. I would like to put a note that all of the chapters in this fic are very longly titled, and I think they're all great. But yeah.
They're also all just very,
chaotic.
Yeah, but I mean, it's all supposed to be a little chaotic. They're very descriptive. Like, you know exactly what's going on.
They are. And so for this one, it is set in August of 2024, and the prompt is falling asleep together. When Sam got out of the shower and headed back toward his room, he realized that despite the open windows at either end of the hallway, it really hadn't cooled down much at all in the hours since sunset. Usually, that would just be a cause for slight annoyance, because it would mean that it would take longer for his room to cool down once he turned on the air conditioner. This fell well outside that usually, though, because it meant that with the downstairs air conditioner broken, Bucky was probably trying to get to sleep in the unrelenting heat. He tossed on a pair of boxers and headed for the stairs. Logically, Sam knew that suggesting Bucky come upstairs was probably a bad idea. It wasn't the tempting fate part. He was really quite comfortable tempting fate when it came to Bucky, because chances seemed pretty high that they were going to end up together anyway, especially after that random surprise glowing interview Bucky had given in the Navy Yard Gazette that, in Sarah's words, read a lot like a love letter. It was just that this kind of tempting fate had real potential to turn into a melodramatic shitstorm, and he just didn't need that kind of stress while it got sorted out. And there was also that it would be much more convenient on several different levels to have things with Bucky start up in New York rather than in his family's home in Delacroix. On the other hand, what was he supposed to do? Let Bucky get heat stroke or whatever happened to super soldiers when they overheated? Sarah was right. He did think too much. It didn't make him wrong, though. It just made him nervous as well as correct. Sam could see his partner shifting around from the doorway, despite the darkened room. He definitely wasn't asleep yet. "Hey," he said softly from the doorway, and Bucky started and twisted around. "Fuck, sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. I just noticed that it really hasn't cooled down much, and I know the AC isn't fixed yet. Do you want to crash with me upstairs?" "I'm fine." Sam didn't even bother to hide his eye roll. Bucky wouldn't be able to see it in the dark anyway, and that stubborn tone definitely warranted it. Not the question I asked. After a moment, Bucky blew out his breath. "You really don't mind?" "Wouldn't have offered if I did." Bucky swiped his phone and AirPod case off the table and followed Sam upstairs. "And don't roll your eyes at me just because I'm trying to be considerate," he said, keeping his voice low enough that it wouldn't carry down the hall and wake up Sarah, AJ, or Cass. "I don't have to see you to know when you're doing it." When Sam glanced back, he could just make out Bucky's grin. It was occasionally a little disconcerting to realize how well that man knew him at this point. Once he'd closed the door behind them, Sam said, "It'll cool down. Just give it a few." He glanced down. "Is this okay, or do you want me to toss on some pajamas?" "It's fine." Bucky hesitated for a moment and then stripped off his shirt and tossed it aside. Sam felt a sudden rush of appreciation for the somewhat old and consequently loud air conditioner that definitely muffled whatever intake of breath that may or may not have resulted when Bucky moved down to his belt. In his defense, literally everything about this. He just hoped that whichever of Bucky's senses were heightened by the serum couldn't tell that his heart was racing as they both collapsed into his bed and waited for the room to cool down. I have a question, he said as he lay there. What? When you dropped my wings off, you told me I could sign for it and you'd go? Bucky immediately groaned and rolled onto his stomach. I hate you, he said into the pillow. The tension wasn't gone exactly, but some of the awkwardness that had been hanging in the air was definitely significantly diffused. What were you going to do with it? Text a picture to Shuri? Fuck off. Bucky's face was still buried in the pillow. I didn't know what to fucking say, okay? So your answer was to pretend that you were moonlighting as the Wakandan version of FedEx? Poking fun at his partner definitely made Sam feel like he was on much more familiar and stable ground. He wasn't sure what that said, but this was one thing he didn't want to dissect. Bucky's shoulders had started to shake with laughter. Yeah, he said, turning his head to look at Sam, who was just as glad that the room was almost certainly too dark to see his eyes. He didn't think Bucky's mind would immediately jump to, Sam was totally just checking out my shoulders, no matter how well he knew him. I wanted to help, I didn't know how to offer, and I said the first thing that came to mind, okay? I don't know why that was it. I never did sign for them, you know. Is Wakandan FedEx going to come after me now? Bucky reached out to shove him gently. Oh, fuck off. We can't all be fucking perfect, okay? Everybody's perfect to someone, Buck, even you. Bucky shoved him again and Sam grinned. I'd be sorry, but you're just too easy. No, you just like getting under my skin. Which was really probably very fair. Don't lie, you love it. Bucky buried his face in the pillow again, but it was only so successful at muffling his laughter. Not the point, Sam. Sam thought it was actually exactly the point, but he didn't bother to argue. Aw, that's so cute.
I heard how much you swear in all of your writing.
I know. Oh, right. Was this supposed to like not have fuck in it? Because
no, it's fine.
Okay, cool. Because I couldn't participate if that wasn't the case.
I will say I was given the choice between two chapters, and this was the one that I felt had the least amount of swearing / sexual innuendos.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's yeah, that's yeah, I you know what? Brooklyn.
It's
and also Bucky is from Brooklyn, so like have to lean into it.
That is
question for you. How did you get into the Sam Bucky ship?
I watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like, if you've seen it, you know what I mean. Like, so Renee, my dear Foxy, started watching the MCU, I guess at the end of last year or something. But so we watched a lot of it together when she was in town, like a month or so ago. I think we like binged like 6 or 7 movies over the course of like 2 days or something. Yeah, like it was a lot. And also we often will watch movies or some of the shows, like, you know, we both put it on the TV and then we do commentary. But anyway, the point is that as soon as we finished it, she was like, yeah, that's not even really subtext. That's just kind of there. So yeah, that the show definitely leaned way into, you know, the kind of bantering that it is very easy
flirting.
to ship.
Just flirting. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of why. And then I started writing, I guess last summer, just a couple fics for it that were kind of like, you know, missing moments or whatever. Then I posted them on AO3 and they got a decent amount of traffic. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I actually like this. And then I kept going. And then now I have, I think that series on AO3 has something like 160,000 words in it. Damn. So,
wow.
Yeah. Most of which is texting. Some of it is like this, but most of it's just people texting.
You do love your chat fics.
I do. Well, I mean, it's like part of it is that they're easier to write. And some of the ones in this series actually are chat fics. I made sure to pick one that wasn't, but a lot of them are. Yeah, mostly because I think that that's, you know, I mean, it's easier for me to write, and yeah, it's more fun. So this actually was a missing moment that was inspired by something that was mentioned in one of the chat fics. And then I was like, you know, I posted that 8 months ago. I think it's time to go back and fill in the blank.
Love that.
Because that series is also not chronological at all. At all. Like, there are no words for how unchronological they are. Because I am chaotic and I can't help it.
Lo, do you have any questions? Oh no, we lost Lo.
No, Lo.
Oh no. R.I.P. to Lo. Come back. Okay, so I think, well, also this series is not just Sam Bucky, right? There's also, this is going to be covering 2 ships.
Yeah.
Can I remember what, I just closed out of the tab. But what's the other ship that's in this series?
The other ship in the series is actually Sam and Natasha, which was kind of the ship, one of the ships I really liked that I think is super underrated, before I watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had initially the series was just Sam Bucky, but then I think partially because I went back and rewatched a lot of things with Renee, I was like, oh, I forgot how much I really like this ship too. And I decided very early on that both of these things can be true. Like, this is like a 10-year span. There is time to have 2 different relationships in a 10-year span.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's but yeah, it's mostly gonna be Sam Bucky, but I have enjoyed writing Sam Natasha. So
Just sprinkling it in there, here and there.
Yeah.
How many prompts do you have completed so far?
I have 14 up on
Okay.
FFT.
So you're pretty
It
much
does not mean
good to go.
Yeah, I have at least 2 more that I need to put up. Yay, Lois back. It's kind of one of those things where I know that most people on FFT are probably not going to be reading this because they don't do MCU fics, which is fine. It just is what it is. But so I am definitely making it more of a priority to post it on AO3 because people are going to read it there. But because I'm posting it there first, I don't necessarily feel like I need to stick within that 1,000 words. Most of them are. One of them I actually had to cut down from like 3,000 words. So that was fun. Yeah, that was fun. But I have 2 others that are definitely over the 1,000 word limit. So I just need to cut them down a little before I upload them. But so I've hit like the 15. They're just not all up on FFT yet.
Well, that's still great to have that. And you still have a whole month until the challenge closes. And you have essentially almost have the 15 minimum required. So
yeah,
you're good. You're solid.
And a lot of them are going to be chat fics, which is easier to write and easier to read. It's just like I like those. Like, I do write a lot of those, but they're fun. It's like they just.
I haven't written one in a long time, but I really miss. I wrote. I've written a couple epistolary, like full, like proper, like letters. I really like doing that too, but I can't really do either chat fic or epistolary style for this series because sci-fi.
That's fair. Although I also have definitely kind of hand waved away. Like, there have been points where there is a fic set in that series where it does not make sense that people had cell phones. There are multiple fics where Bucky is texting, and it makes no sense for him to have access to a cell phone and be texting.
Nope.
It doesn't make any sense. I am choosing to say, just fucking go with it. I
Amazing.
just go with it. It's fun. Just go with it.
Well, do you have any questions for Bronwyn?
I hope you didn't ask this question because my internet fully just cut out on me there. But I did have one question of, so I mentioned that like I planned a lot for this, and I'm pretty sure from what I've talked to you about, you didn't really plan at all. So I guess it's like a two-part question. So like one, like how is that going where like you're not really planning anything, you're just going with vibes of like your writing, and like is it helping you that you can just write what you feel like in the moment? And then two, like how does that work for you with like the timeline of everything and making sure things like add up?
I think this is actually where it's really helpful that these are, my MCU fics on AO3 all are within the same universe.
Mhm.
So I think I would be really struggling with that if I didn't already have that structure. But even some things that go before where, like there are some fics that are taking place years before anything I had set initially, but it's still like, I know what happened there. But I think without having that structure, I would be having a hard time. I'd probably still be doing it this way because I'm bad at planning, but I would be having a much harder time. And as it is, I definitely am still bumping into things where I'm like, those two things don't tally together. But this is what editing is for.
What's that?
Yeah. So but I don't know. I mean, I think part of the thing, I am giving such longer answers than you guys, but whatever.
Question, you can you have a two-part answer.
That is a good point. Thank you. See, this is why you're one of my closest friends on FFT. You like justify my rambling. It's great.
And that's come to you. Yeah. When I need this specific spreadsheet thing, can you help me?
What actually is really funny is that I do have a spreadsheet for this series. So I'm simultaneously very organized and very not. Which I'm comfortable with. I feel like that's my vibe.
Yes.
But yeah, it's helpful for me because often how I write, and this also predates this series. This has been the case with like my Drastoria fics before this, where I will just be inspired to write a thing, and also often I will bump into, like the throwaway line is like, oh, this would actually be fun to depict, and then I want to write it. So it's a very organic process. And so even though I'm bouncing around literally the space of like 10 years, yeah, it's still like, I think that's still part of why it is working for me to not plan it all out. Cause like the prompts I don't have like done yet, there are a few I have a vague idea what I'm doing it for. Some of them I have no idea. Mm-hmm. It's just going to happen. There are others that I have a vague idea. I know that's probably not going to be what actually ends up happening.
Well, on that note, I think it's time.
It is.
Last one. Bronwyn is now going to read the first chapter of mine.
Ooh. Okay. I had it pulled up and everything.
And then you lost it.
No, I mean, like, it's already here. It's great. Oh. I feel so proud of myself. It's in the Hall of the Lunar King, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just double checking. Also, I'm totally about to sneeze. I hate it when this happens.
Bless you.
Thank you. So this is You Make It Look So Easy by Mage Maddie. And it's chapter 1 in the Hall of the Lunar King. So Maddie and Lo definitely have like more elegant chapter titles and story titles than I do. Holden could feel the nerves and tension radiating off Naomi as they took the lift down from their quarters on Luna Station to the UN Secretary General's headquarters. That's just quarters. Oh well. He reached out for her hand, and she gratefully latched onto it, squeezing tightly. She exhaled slowly, a tiny bit of tension releasing from her shoulders. It's going to be fine, Naomi. They're going to love you, Holden said. Naomi side-eyed him. Just maybe don't say much to Father Cesar. He's kind of a racist, and I can't trust he won't say anything racist to you. Well, as long as it's just one I shouldn't talk to after introductions, that's not a terrible ratio, I suppose. Anything else I should know before we go in there? Naomi replied. Holden scratched his head with his free hand and sighed. I've done my best to warm them up to you, so just be yourself. I'll be with you the whole time. I know you will. That's not what I'm worried about. Then what are you worried about? Actually liking them as much as you've made me want to like them with everything you've told me about them, Naomi admitted. It's stupid, I know. The lift slowed, and Holden pulled Naomi in, wrapping his arms around her waist. She reciprocated and pushed her forehead against his shoulder. He rubbed soothing circles on her back as she took 3 deep breaths in. With a whir and quiet ding, the lift reached the end of its trip. Holden and Naomi separated, but stayed linked together via their hands as the lift doors opened. Warm lights were evenly spaced throughout the hallway. Plush carpet softened their footfalls in the quiet corridor. They paused before the door situated 2 doors down from the right at the end of the hall, hearing the soft murmur of multiple voices layering over one another from the other side. Holden looked at Naomi. On her nod, he opened the door to his waiting parents. 8 faces turned to look at them. 8 welcoming and relieved smiles. Holden stepped forward and held out his arms in an open embrace. All 8 of his parents circled around him in a giant family hug. Naomi took half a step forward and then stayed rooted in the doorway. After a few seconds, Holden pulled back and cleared his throat, quieting everyone down. Everyone, this is Naomi Nagata. She's the best engineer in the whole damn system and a better person than I could ever be, he announced, smiling and gesturing at her to enter the room. Naomi returned the smile and entered the rooms proper, the door closing behind her with a quiet click. Mother Elise was the first to break away from the group and approach her, hugging her close by way of greeting. Naomi relaxed a bit with the hug and gladly entered conversation with her, as Holden was pulled aside by Father Cesar and Father Joseph. The noise of speaking filled the room once again. Holden kept sneaking glances at Naomi, checking in to make sure everything was still okay. Father Tom and Mother Sophie joined the pair of women, greeting Naomi with handshakes and small talk about the weird feeling of the low gravity of Luna. She smiled politely and replied when she was supposed to, eventually catching Holden's eye. He finished his conversation with Father Cesar and Father Joseph and came over to Naomi's little group. Is everyone getting to know each other fine over here? He asked, lightly placing a hand on Naomi's lower back. Mother Sophie smiled brightly. I think so, Jimmy. She's already given me so many tips for dealing with the lower gravity of Luna, so I don't feel so queasy and off-kilter bouncing around. You just have to pick an orientation and stick with it, and use less force when moving. Easy as anything else in space, really, Naomi said. Holden made a noise of appreciation. I take it you have all gone to stand up from your chair and hit the ceiling a few times since transporting up here, huh? A chorus of chuckles told him his answer, and he gently squeezed Naomi's side. She leaned into his touch a bit and caught the glance from Mother Elise, but willed herself not to blush. They all spoke for another 2 hours together, telling the stories of their travels on Rocinante, the New World, basically everything they've learned since shipping out on the Canterbury. Finally, James got a ping on his comm. that required his and Naomi's presence elsewhere on the station. They had to say goodbye to his family. Another round of hugs and handshakes, and they were out the door. Naomi thankfully exited before Holden did, so he had hopes that she didn't hear the slightly racist comment Father Cesar made about their next mission in the belt. Later, back in their crew quarters on the Rocinante, Naomi was curled into Holden's side, arms slung across his stomach. "Thank you," she murmured into his bicep. He shifted so he could look more directly at her face. "For what?" "For not letting them be directly racist at me, I suppose. And for being the great man you are. Thank you for being so gracious and patient with my parents. They can be a lot, especially when they're meeting someone in that sort of context and considering the pressure of our current situation," he parried back, kissing the top of her head. Holden felt her smile into his arm and pulled her closer to him, drawing the sheets up over them. "I love you, Naomi Nagata. I love you, James Holden." I totally butchered multiple pronunciations, and I am so sorry, but also that was adorable.
That's okay. Thank you. That was the first one I came up with, which is why it's the first in this series.
I love it.
It was very cute.
It was. So actually, I think I have the same question that we have both kind of asked each other already. How do you feel about writing in this fandom?
Well, the lovely grumpy cat, Chris, gently nudged me to write this ship for this prompt challenge, because I was like, I didn't really know who I wanted to write it with. I wasn't really feeling the vibes for any of my usual Harry Potter ones. I was considering like Hermione Fred, as that's kind of been a newer one for me lately. But I wasn't really getting anything too strong for that. And then Chris is like, you should write Holden and Naomi. There's so many different options for that. And I'm like, you know what? Like it's in space. Stargazing is easy. I'm like, oh, that's right. That's true. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So yeah, I just kind of went with it from there. And she gave me a wonderful reminder of a scene in season 2 that is the second chapter of this series that is Little Sexy, which is why we didn't read that one today. So that's been helpful to have. I also have the books. Oh no, I moved it. You can't see the book. There is a book. There it is. That is book 8 of the series that I'm also reading right now. So I just finished the TV show. So I've been trying to pull some inspiration from moments from both the show and the books, as they are slightly different, but still generally the same. Which has been really nice to have that as kind of a groundwork for it. And the fandom itself is pretty small on AO3, but I've gotten a lot of good feedback on it, so that's really nice.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, and it's so freaking cute.
Yes.
I love it.
No, that's a lot of fun.
So I do have a question. So okay, so how do I put this? So we all, I guess, started with Harry Potter, which is more fantasy than sci-fi, but you seem to gravitate more towards sci-fi, just in like the things you like to like the media you like to create and the media you like to consume. Obviously, yes. So I was wondering, like, how did that kind of like come about? Like, how did that progress, or was like obviously you enjoy fantasy to some extent, but like, I guess, how is that different to you? Like, how do you see your love of sci-fi versus your love of fantasy?
Oh man, that's such a good question, Lo.
I know, I'm so smart sometimes.
And it's so funny because today is Sunday, and this morning was my sci-fi D&D stream, and then this evening I'll be running my fantasy D&D game. So I have to do both in one day. D&D is great, you guys. I don't know. I feel like growing up, I mean, obviously I read Harry Potter, starting when I was younger. But I also just read a lot of books. A lot of them are fantasy, but also there's like quite a few of the fantasy books I had also had some elements of sci-fi in them to some degree. I'm completely blanking on any books now, but I've always loved fantasy, always loved sci-fi, but sci-fi I think tends to have slightly more adult themes in terms of like there's usually more violence or stakes a little bit higher because space. As you will. But I see them both very similarly in that with, fantasy, there tends to be elements of like, magic or, your suspense of your disbelief because you can it's hand-wavy magic-y stuff. But with sci-fi, there's a lot more of you can do hand-wavy suspense of disbelief because technology. And that's particularly true here as this is meant to take place. I actually don't know what year this takes place in. In sometimes in like the semi-near future of Earth. So it still, binds itself to the current reality, but has shown enough progression that we can assume they know what's going on and how ships work and all of those things. But in terms of like how I write it, I don't know if my approach is super different because at least with this type of thing, because, I've written a lot of fantasy original fiction pieces, and this is still in the same vein of it being like a one shot, but like my screenplay, I have to think about that in a very different manner because I have to think about it's primarily dialogue and just a little bit of scene settings for that. So having to get into that kind of headspace for that purpose is different. But for this, which is narrative piece or, just a narrative piece of prose, I think I'm in the similar headspace for both. Just, finagling my language is what's different.
Okay.
That's a very winding answer.
Do you think you're going to continue to write for this fandom or like branch out from this ship after we're done with the Fluff Challenge?
I don't know. I also haven't written anything really. I wrote a little bit for this last night, but not enough to make another prompt. I would love to write more for this ship. I might also write a little bit of other stuff outside of this ship because what's also great about this particular series and this fandom is there's actually a lot of canon LGBTQ polyamorous relationships. Holden's he's one son born of 8 parents because they're a collective, and that's something that can just happen. So that's really cool. And I just haven't read a whole lot of fic in this fandom, but heck, if I can find a niche, I'm gonna get in there. So I don't know.
Absolutely.
But I also wrote my first Critical Role fic during Camp Nano because I had inspo for it, and so I'm probably gonna get more of that too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and more of my original fiction stuff as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I quickly ask, why does James have 8 parents?
So he has 8 parents, and they are all his biological parents, because they can do gene stuff.
So
one mother actually carried him, but then to make him, everyone's genes got put in. So he's a little bit of everybody in him because they can genetically do that at this time. I mean, they can regrow limbs with a medical gel. So yeah, that's why he has 8 actual parents. They're not all together. Like they all have connections in some way, but like some of I think 2 of the fathers are just only one of them is only there for the one father, and then the other one in that pairing is there for that guy and then another guy, but does not have a romantic relationship with any of the women. So yeah,
cool.
Yeah, I think it's fun. It's it's just there. No comment other than like, well, you have 8 parents. How does that? And you're the only child of those 8 parents. How might that have affected your upbringing?
Yeah. I like that. We didn't plan this, but yeah, all of our fics are revolving around the LGBTQ people because my characters are both chaotic bisexuals. Just as a,
I don't think James is such a straight white guy,
but his parents are.
But his parents are not, so it works out.
And then Nina is bisexual chaos, and Matthias is just there. Straight white man.
What about Naomi?
Naomi, I think, is portrayed probably to be straight, but I get some implications of maybe a little bit of bisexual in there. Yeah. But nothing's ever explicitly stated. She's always been, her history with other exes has been men always. So
Okay.
I don't know for sure.
Very
But
fair.
yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
It's a great show, great book series. It's on
A lot of
Amazon
fun.
Prime. Go watch it.
We should all read or watch The Expanse and Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Six of Crows. I think we should all
I
do that.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So summer bucket list is do all that.
Yes. I mean, I actually seem to have some time this summer. Well, hopefully that's not famous last words.
Okay. Lo had one final question.
I do. So I think this was, or I guess not for you, Bronwyn, and somewhat for me, but it is branching into new fandoms. So we can go in order that we are on the screen. But just if you were to give advice to others who are looking to branch into like writing or reading new fandoms, but mostly writing, what would it be?
Just do it.
Pulling
You
out
just
the
gotta go for it.
Nike.
Take that leap. If you hate it, they hate it. But it's you should write what you want to write. If you want to write in a new fandom that you maybe or maybe not have read before, go for it. Like I just said, I have not actually read. I think I've read one fic now that is not my own in the Expanse fandom on AO3. Go for it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Anything else, Bronwyn?
I guess that's kind of similar to my advice too. Like, this isn't necessarily a new fandom for me in that I started it about a year ago, but it was new a year ago. So, before that, I hadn't, most of what I'd written was Harry Potter, not all of it, but most of it. And yeah, I think I can understand how it's weird and intimidating. I think in part because I think that if you're posting it on FFT, you are typically going to have fewer people who are going to engage with it because fewer people will be familiar with that fandom.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you post it on AO3, then often it sounds like all three of us have kind of had the experience that posting a different fandom on AO3, has definitely gotten more feedback than, but so I think that can also be intimidating because it's like people I have no idea about and do not know will have thoughts about this. But I don't know. I think that do it, and also, you don't need to start with a huge thing. Start with a short thing that is the kind of thing you have, some comfort in. I started writing like chat fics, like texting, because that was, my comfort zone. So yeah, I think do it, and it doesn't need to be a big thing. Do it once, play with it, have fun with it. And at least in my experience, doing it once or twice was like a gateway drug.
Lo, what about you?
Yeah, like I started because I was like, well, Taylor's writing Six of Crow things, and I want to give Taylor a gift. And I don't know if I ever really did. I kind of did. And then, kind of like Bronwyn, it spiraled. So I guess it's just like like for me, it was because I wanted to participate in something with a friend, like to have that connection. But it was also like, I want to give something to her that she would like. But I'm thinking of branching out into others. And for that, it's like been on the back burner. And then recently for one of the fandoms I really like, I had a really good idea. It's still in my head. So I'm probably going to do that. And it's just like, if you want to, just sit with it. Like if you're not comfortable with it right now and you're maybe like, I don't really know, I'm a little nervous, just like wait and find a reason to do it, whether that be because you want to see that specific story, or you want to give something to a friend and be like, look it, I know you like this fandom, so I made this for you. And just like, yeah, sometimes for me, it was like writing for Harry Potter was just like, I'm writing because I have an idea and like, I'm just going to do it. And for these other things, it's very much of like it's still like I have an idea and I want to do it, but it's also just like there's more there when you start. Like you need that more, that kind of like push of like, you know what, I haven't seen this, I want to see it, let's do this. And like it's fine if it takes you 6 months to do it, like that's fine. If it takes you a year, that's also fine. But like like try and find that one thing where you're like, this is absolutely what I want to do, and that like you're excited for, and it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
I would also actually say that you can, even if you have friends who aren't familiar with the fandom, talk to them about it, because you know, it's like I have not read Six of Crows yet, and I like to think that I have been encouraging and supportive of Taylor and Lowe writing Six of Crows. So I think that that's also something that people don't necessarily think about. Like, you know, your friends want to support you, whether or not they are familiar with the thing you're writing.
Yep.
Besides, if they read it and they have questions, then you can just go and ask your friend questions about their work, and then they're happy to talk to you about it. It's great.
Yeah.
It's like the best of both worlds. Either you understand it perfectly and you're like, this is so good, or you don't and you're like, this is so good, I have so many questions, talk to me about it.
Y'all, ask your writer friends questions about what they're working on.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right. I think that does it for today. Yay. Thank you all for joining me/us for the May Fic Night. I will see you all again next month.
Yay.
Bye, guys.
Bye.